Does your forehand got you feeling like this?
Yes.
I know I've been there, and it's super frustrating when you're out there on the court and you don't have a forehand that you can rely on. The only thing worse is probably if you can't buy a second serve.
Net second serve.
So today we got a great video. We're going to be focusing on 6 common forehand technical errors that I see all the time when I'm coaching. Probably doing one of these technical errors and it's hindering you from having an effective, powerful forehand. So we're going to go through the 6 technical forehand errors, and then you're going to be able to get out on the court and put a focus on whatever one that you're doing wrong to help you get your forehand back. Before we get into the forehand errors, it's really important, if you're trying to make a change to your ground stroke, forehand, backhand, whatever, that it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a mental focus of really focusing on whatever you're trying to implement into your game. It'll take maybe 2-3 months, of hard work, dedication, really focusing on it when you're able to, when you're on the tennis court. One of the best ways to start getting a feel for maybe a new change that you're trying to put into your stroke is simply doing swings, air swings at home, or if you can get court time and have someone feed you a ball or hand toss you a ball, because if you can slow the ball down a little bit and simplify maybe the footwork or something else, it gives you a better ability to focus on the new stroke that you're trying to put into your ground stroke. Now, we're starting with these 6 forehand technical errors in no particular order, but the first one we are going to be talking about is when players have too big of a loop on their forehand. A general rule of thumb, I would like to say, I think your loop's too big if that hand is kind of starting to get above the head or around the top of your head. That probably means you have a little bit too big of a loop. As you can see in the videos of this clip over here, I'm over exaggerating my loop on my forehand, but you can just kind of tell the forehand loop's getting really big, it's getting really kind of funky, unconventional, and this just causes not one, a lot more room for errors and not being able to be consistent with your forehand. But as well as, I've always noticed that players that tend to have too big of a loop and maybe they can't get it around in time with their preparation, they either end up having a late contact point where they're not making contact with the ball out in front of them, or B, they maybe they hit it out in front, but they're never really fully getting their racket under the ball to create topspin on the shot. Now, a lot of people might be going, hey, there's all sorts of top pro players on the tour that have really big loops or bigger loops on their forehands, maybe like Francis Tiafoe or Dagopolov or whoever else. But listen, these guys are professional. These guys and girls are professional players. They're unbelievable athletes, and they've spent an unfathomable amount of time on the tennis court hitting millions and millions of balls. So I'm not saying it's not possible to have a great forehand and have a big loop, but typically it's a lot harder to time and it can be a lot more difficult. So just remember, if that hand's getting kind of above your head on your forehand, it's probably a little bit too big of a loop. The second big technical error that I see on the forehand, and this one I see quite a lot, is when players, they're never really fully getting their racket under the ball. This is a really big problem because then you're never really creating topspin on your shot, and if without topspin, we're playing a much smaller margin of a game. It's much more difficult to be consistent. If you're one of those people that you're never getting the racket under the ball, I'm sure you're not the most consistent of players, and it's just a big technical error that you're going to really have to focus on. One of the best ways that I have found to help someone get under the ball is just by sometimes I'll have someone start with their racket. I'll be like, oh, get the racket back, get it under the ball, then I'll toss it and I'll have them swing, and then I'll have them do more of their normal forehand where they're focusing on getting that racket under the ball. Just trying to get them feeling what it's like to get the racket under the ball. Or if someone has a really tough time getting on the ball, sometimes I'll literally, just to get the feel, I'll be like, all right, I literally want your racket touching the ground, then I'll toss the ball, and then I'll have them swing up at it just so they can kind of start getting that feel of how that racket needs to get beneath the ball in order to create topspin on the shot. Another really important thing with getting under the ball that I feel people really need to understand is it depends on the shot I'm hitting. As you can see in this first shot, my racket gets under the ball, but the shape on this shot is there's not nearly as much shape as on my second shot. As you can see, I'm really getting under the ball. I hit this one a little too thin, not on front enough, but right, the shape on the second shot is going to be much more of an arc, much heavier of a ball. You have to understand that if I'm trying to play a flatter shot, that still is going to have quite a bit of topspin. I'm not getting my racket's not getting nearly as under the ball, and I'm driving through it more. Versus if I'm trying to play a heavier, spinnier ball, my racket's going to really get under the ball quite a bit more, and it's going to be a much steeper swing path at that shot. The third one, this one I see quite a bit, enough where I think it's a common forehand technical error, but is when people do not have a unit turn, when they're not getting their body, that unit turn off that first step. Listen, like right when you know you're hitting a forehand, you got to be preparing with the hands and with the unit turn in that leg. Like boom, I get that unit turn, and my body's turned, and I'm ready for this forehand. See how not just my upper body turned, but my lower body's turning as well with my hips. That's so important, not only for being able to use your hips and your lower body on your forehand, but it's going to help you be able to move out to the ball in a much smoother manner. As you can see from this video, this player, me exaggerating, but right, my movements kind of looks a little weird out to the ball. I'm never getting my hips and my legs fully involved with my shot, and that's going to cause issues later on down the road because you're not going to be able to really explode and have that powerful of a forehand. The fourth common forehand technical error that I notice a ton of is when players are attacking the ball with their racket face open on contact, and this causes them to kind of do a wrist roll to try to create that topspin at the end. Now this is a really big problem because when players start to hit out on the ball or try to hit through the ball faster, you're not going to be able to create enough topspin on the ball to get it to come back down into the court, because that open racket face is going to cause the ball to go upwards, and you can't really create a ton of topspin by the wrist roll action. It's a thing I see quite a bit. It's a lot tougher to solve. It could be a grip change. You might have to do a grip change with the player. You might have to really focus on them trying to keep those. I always like to think maybe keeping the strings pointed down to the ground a little bit, all the way up through contact. That's something I've found to help. But this is one of the trickier ones to fix, because you have to get a player to kind of change how their wrist is coming at the ball, as well as it's going to feel a lot different how the strings are biting the ball to create that topspin. The fifth common forehand technical error that I see is players not using their left hand or non-dominant hand correctly, or not really at all. Now it's really important when on a forehand, I need my non-racket hand, my left hand. That left hand's gonna help push the racket away from me, so I have space, which ends up creating to lengthening out through the ball. Because if I don't have that space initially, I jam myself and I can't lengthen out through the ball. That's the first thing. The second really big thing is having that left hand out away from you helps kind of guide a player as to the spacing they have with the ball. Because if that ball's traveling underneath the hand, underneath your arm, that probably means it's too close, and then that way you're going to be jammed yourself. So this is kind of a thing that helps kind of help a player get a better feel for their spacing that they need so that they can have a proper forehand. The sixth forehand technical error that I see a lot, this one is very common, it's very easy, is having a late contact point. We're going to take a look here at one of the best players to ever take the ball super early, and that's Roger Federer. Just as you're watching Roger's forehand here, just look and notice how early, how in front of him he actually is making contact with the ball. Now, there's so many players that they'll make contact with the ball. I'm going to pause it. Almost here is where they're hitting the ball, kind of even with their body, or maybe just like a little bit in front of them. And that's just, you want to be able to hit that forehand super early out in front of you, and that's where you're gonna get all that length and that transfer of all your power into that ball. It's the same concept as with the pitcher. If they were to throw and release from here versus if they can extend all the way through the ball in their throwing motion. The one with more length is gonna be a much more powerful shot. I hope you guys really like this video today and that you're able to get out on the court and get your forehand back to what it used to be. Next week, we're gonna be talking about footwork, the recovery footwork that you wanna use when you're out wide, pulled off the court, and what you have to do to get back quickly and explosively to be ready for the next ball. So you're gonna really wanna stay tuned for that one because I see so many people not be explosive when they're out on a wide ball or not being effective with their footwork when they're trying to recover and get ready for the next shot.